Back in 2017, what is now almost 6 years ago, Nintendo released the masterpiece of a game that is Super Mario Odyssey, which was a return to the sandbox style of Mario after 15 years of more linear titles. And even though these linear games were a lot of fun, there was just something so refreshing about going back to that sandbox style of 64 and Sunshine. But that's not to say these sandbox style Marios are completely non-linear. In fact, they're pretty far from it. All of them have specific early, mid, and late game areas and objectives that you're only meant to go to when you've progressed a certain amount through the game. It's not like as soon as you get the Odyssey, you can go straight to Moon Kingdom and beat Bowser. No, you have to go along each of the individual kingdoms that the game wants you to. But that all changed in 2021, with the release of the port of Super Mario 3D World to the Nintendo Switch. Now, 3D World itself is one of the most linear Mario games out there. Even though it is one of my favorites, I can't deny that it is incredibly linear and not open at all. But the interesting part isn't actually 3D World itself. No, it's Bowser's Fury, a much smaller game that was bundled in with the 3D World port. And even though it is a pretty small experience, it is effectively the first ever open world Mario game and possibly the future of 3D Mario as a franchise. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about if Nintendo finally decides to make a Super Mario Odyssey sequel, what would happen if they decide to make it open world like Bowser's Fury, but on a much larger scale. As always, this video is comprised entirely of my opinion, so if you guys have different ideas for what you want to see in Mario Odyssey 2, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. Now with all that out of the way, let's roll the intro and get into what Super Mario Odyssey 2 could be like if it was open world. So of course, one of the most important aspects of an open world game would be the world itself. So first, let's talk about how the world of this game could fully realize a combination between Super Mario Odyssey and Bowser's Fury. While the different islands that you could freely travel between in Bowser's Fury did often have their own theming, they lack the sense of immersion that Mario Odyssey's kingdoms had. Because each of the kingdoms were their own separate areas, and you could never really see another kingdom from whichever one you were in, all the different kingdoms throughout Odyssey were able to be entirely distinct from one another, both visually and in terms of their different gameplay tropes. And even though Bowser's Fury was at least somewhat successful in this regard, given that all the islands did have their own distinct theming, they were still all just islands in Lake Clapcat. You could always tell that you're in a lake setting. There was never really any change in the overall visuals of what's surrounding whatever setting that you're actually in. But if the concept of Bowser's Fury was applied to a Super Mario Odyssey sequel, then it's very possible that this problem would be almost entirely mitigated. Because this game would obviously have a map much larger than that of Bowser's Fury, I believe it's possible for it to strike a perfect balance between the themed areas of Odyssey and the common area of Bowser's Fury. I think there could probably be one central world that everything takes place in that you're able to travel throughout. However, in this world, there are also many different distinct areas, each the size of probably a Mario Odyssey kingdom. And in my opinion, it's very clear that this concept could work, because there are games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that have executed it flawlessly. There is, however, one small issue with this concept. However, I do think it could explain why we haven't actually gotten Mario Odyssey 2 yet, if Nintendo is indeed making this game. Mario Odyssey is a visually stunning game, especially by Nintendo Switch standards. Bowser's Fury has a much lower level of detail, though it does still look pretty good, and it still lags in some areas while Fury Bowser is on the map. Given how good Nintendo is at optimization, they could very well prove me wrong, but I feel like it is just not possible to keep that same level of detail of Mario Odyssey while also having a world the size of Breath of the Wild or even Tears of the Kingdom. Though I doubt it would be that size, you still get the idea. Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, while absolutely visually stunning games, do have a lot of visual compromises that are made. A lot of the textures are a little bit lower res, and you can clearly see where polygons meet in a lot of areas of the map. That works really well in the cel-shaded art style of those Zelda games. However, I feel like that just wouldn't work super well for Mario Odyssey 2. This means that it could be that in order to make the world the best it possibly could be for this game, and to give the developers more creative freedom, Nintendo could be waiting to release this new Mario Odyssey sequel until they have the next console Traversal, which will likely be much more powerful than the base Switch. But that's pretty much all there is to talk about with the world of this game. So now let's move on to some of the methods of traversing that world that I've come up with. And some of these I would absolutely love to see made into reality. And the first of these is actually one of the main things that inspired me to make this video, because I had this idea not too long ago and I just needed to put it in a YouTube video of some kind. What if you were able to traverse the sprawling map of this game with a Mario Kart that you unlock partway through the game? Maybe you could even unlock different kart parts that you could customize your kart with and give it different stats by exploring the different areas of the world. And maybe by doing more difficult challenges, you would eventually unlock the ability to use your glider, be able to drive underwater, as well as use anti-grav. At this point, I guess I'm just talking about a potential Mario Kart story mode. But if you guys want to see a full video on that, make sure to subscribe and let me know down below, because I would absolutely love to continue talking about this in its own exclusive video. But I guess the gist of it is that I would absolutely love to see a traversal mechanic of having a Mario Kart to travel a giant open world in a Mario Odyssey sequel. Some of the traversal mechanics in the original Mario Odyssey were the different captures that you could get in each of the individual kingdoms. So I'd like to briefly talk about some new captures that could be added to the game's sequel. These won't just be random captures that I think could be added to the game, however, as they will be restricted to ones that will help with traversing the environment. And the first one is straight out of Bowser's Fury. What if Plessy was a capture in Mario Odyssey 2? She would likely function just as she does in Bowser's Fury, minus possibly the ability to destroy most enemies, as that would be pretty overpowered if you took her to other areas of the map outside of the likely watery areas that she would be found in. Another is one that I'm honestly really surprised just wasn't in Mario Odyssey at all, and that is the Koopa Troopa. Outside of the Koopa freerunners, there were no actual Koopa enemies that you could face in Mario Odyssey, and I think it would be so cool if not only were they an enemy that you had to defeat, but you could also capture them and possibly go into their shell, similar to how you do in Mario 3D World, or like the blue shell power-up in New Super Mario Bros. DS. And the final capture that I want to talk about is one that I think that could potentially be the coolest of all of the ones that I've mentioned already, and that is the Unchained Chain Chomp. Now, Chain Chomps are, of course, already a capture in the original Mario Odyssey. However, they're always tethered to something, which is how their actual capture mechanic works. But imagine if you had a Chain Chomp that not only wasn't tethered to anything so you could just bounce around as one, but you could also wrap their chain around things in order to have the same power as the Chain Chomp from the original Mario Odyssey. Except, once you launch the Chain Chomp, you won't be ejected from the capture, and instead, it'll send you and the Chain Chomp launching in whatever direction that you decided to send it. Not only do I feel like this could let you traverse the map incredibly fast, but I feel like it would also just be a lot of fun to control. But what use is it talking about how the world of this game could work, or all the different ways to traverse it, if we don't talk about all the different kingdoms that you'll be going to? Now, kingdoms would probably work a little bit differently than how they did in the original Super Mario Odyssey, as in that game, you always had to get a certain amount of moons in order to progress to the next kingdom. But if all the kingdoms were part of one big world that you could seamlessly traverse, then this concept clearly wouldn't be able to work. So I would imagine beating each of these kingdoms would likely grant you a reward that would either enhance your moveset or just make it easier to beat Bowser or any other future boss fights. I would imagine power moons would kind of serve the same function as they did in Mario Odyssey as well, being fuel for the Odyssey, meaning that the more power moons you have, then the farther you'll be able to take the Odyssey from wherever your starting area was. This kind of ties into the traversal section of this video, as it would allow you to reach areas of the game that would otherwise take quite a while to get to much faster the more you progress into the game. But you might be wondering, why am I talking about this stuff when I'm supposed to be talking about the different kingdoms that could be in Mario Odyssey's sequel? And that's because I also want to talk about the different potential rewards you could get from each of the kingdoms, as well as possibly differences in the different power moons across the entire world. First, I'd like to talk about some kingdoms that could return from past Mario games, specifically the games in Super Mario 3D All-Stars. And the first of these is, of course, Super Mario 64. Now, we did already get a Mario 64 based kingdom in the original Super Mario Odyssey in the form of the Mushroom Kingdom. However, that wasn't really based off of the game's actual levels, instead based on the exterior of the game's hub world, which I don't really think counts as an actual revival of levels from Mario 64. So what if this kingdom ended up having a full-on remake of Bob-omb Battlefield, Womp's Fortress, and Dire Dire Docks all connected to each other? And you might be wondering, how could this even work? Back in Mario 64, these were all completely separate separate levels, and you had to go into individual paintings in order to access each of them. But what if in this game, Peach's castle was reduced to rubble by Bowser's airships, and because of this, a lot of the levels from Mario 64 have emerged from the paintings into the quote-unquote real world. This could also allow some of the geometry of these levels to change at least somewhat significantly to still be reminiscent of their original versions while also catering to the new moveset of Mario Odyssey's sequel. The moons in this kingdom would obviously be replaced by power stars, and I feel like they could have a pretty cool attribute if you use them to fuel up the Odyssey. What if they allowed you to, mid-flight in the Odyssey, allow you to activate a power that would cause you to be invincible, like you got the superstar power-up, that way you won't be harmed by any flying enemies. This would likely drain your fuel faster than if you just didn't activate the power at all, meaning that you wouldn't be able to travel as far with the Odyssey, but I still feel like it would be a really cool power to be able to have. The reward for beating this kingdom could also potentially be the wing cap from Mario 64, which I think it would be super cool to see a modern iteration of. But now moving on to the game that I think is most likely to get its own kingdom in Mario Odyssey sequel, whether it's open world or not, we have Super Mario Sunshine. Now, if you didn't know already, Isle Delfino was actually potentially planned to be in the original Super Mario Odyssey, as Isle Delfino was actually on the map in a lot of that game's promotional material, and it's actually still part of the model of the globe that's on the Odyssey already in the game. It just happens to have been covered over with a blue texture, so it looks more like it's part of the ocean. And I feel like this could work perfectly for an open world style of Mario. Imagine if you had to go away from the mainland of the game across the ocean and you'd come across Isle Delfino. And imagine if you were able to go to all the different areas from Mario Sunshine without having to go through any loading zones. Instead, you're just able to walk there. I feel like that would lend itself perfectly to this open world style of Mario, and I would absolutely love to see it become a reality in some Mario game in the future, even if it's not a Mario Odyssey sequel. The power moons in this game would very likely be replaced by the shine sprites from Super Mario Sunshine. And I feel like a special effect they could have if you use them to fuel the Odyssey is maybe they could dispel any sort of goop that's around the map, similar to the goop that's in Bowser's Fury or in, of course, Super Mario Sunshine, if that does end up making an appearance in this game. And what better reward for finishing this Isle Delfino kingdom than gaining access to Flood from Super Mario Sunshine and being able to use it in your moveset. I feel like it would be a good idea if this and the wing cap from Mario 64 that I previously mentioned were to be able to be toggled on or off. That way you can choose between the base Mario Odyssey moveset and any other movesets that you will have unlocked throughout this game. But we've got to talk about some brand new kingdoms soon, so let's quickly go over the last potential kingdom from Mario 3D All-Stars, which would be a kingdom based on Super Mario Galaxy. And before we talk about what the kingdom itself could contain, let's first talk about how you would even get to a Mario Galaxy themed kingdom. I mean, wouldn't it have to be in space? Well, I think you would have to do one of two things in order to access this galaxy-based kingdom. The first would be to maybe do some sort of platforming challenge that would unlock a launch star and would send you up to Rosalina's observatory. And the other thing you could potentially do instead is if you completed the Mario 64 themed level first and you had the wing cap, you could just use that to fly up to the observatory yourself. And then you could use the observatory to launch yourself to different galaxies that may be floating above the mainland. Maybe for whatever reason, they've somehow come a lot closer to the actual world of the game, so you don't have to necessarily go directly to space. Rather, they've all become part of this world's atmosphere. I'm aware this idea is a little bit far-fetched to say the least, even if we're just speculating. So I'm pretty sure this will be the least likely of these kingdoms to come to fruition if there is a Mario Odyssey sequel. Even so, I'm still going to talk about what I think could be in this kingdom, as well as the reward for beating it. I feel like this would consist of some sort of combination of Good Egg Galaxy and Gusty Garden Galaxy, two of the most famous galaxies from Super Mario Galaxy. That was a lot of times to say galaxy in one sentence, wow. This would mean that a lot of the different planets and planetoids that were part of these galaxies would be all jumbled together, and you'd have to go in between remains of these two different galaxies. And I'm honestly not sure what a reward for beating this kingdom could be, other than just a special item in the game. I feel like Mario's spin from Galaxy wouldn't be too much of a change to his moveset to warrant it being a reward, especially because you could get much more movement potential just using the base Mario Odyssey moveset with Cappy. And I feel like the Power Stars could do the same same thing that they could from the Mario 64 kingdom, but if you have any ideas for the potential reward of this kingdom, as well as some different things that the Power Stars from Galaxy could do, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to see what kinds of ideas you guys have. And before we move on to the brand new levels, let me just quickly throw in an honorable mention of the Sprixie Kingdom from 3D World. I mean, it already has Kingdom in the name. I feel like it could work really well. Mainly, I would just really like to see the final world of that game, World Bowser, incorporated into another Mario game, at least in some way, because I feel like it would be so cool to fully explore that area. But now, let's move on to the fully new kingdoms. First of which would be a music kingdom, taking inspiration from the Music Park track from Mario Kart 7. I feel like this could just be such an insanely cool concept. I mean, imagine platforming on a giant piano, and anytime you landed on any of the keys, they would sink down and play the note that's associated with them. What if there were even special timed challenges where you had to pick up an instrument, play some notes, and those notes would appear up in the sky, and then you'd have to platform across them before they disappeared? I feel like there are just so many cool ideas that Nintendo could do if they decided to put a music-themed world in one of their Mario games at some point. So even if it's not in Mario Odyssey's sequel, I would love to see an idea like this be a reality in the future. Similarly to those time challenges that I mentioned earlier, what if the reward for beating this kingdom is that you actually got the instrument from the time challenges to use anywhere in this game's world? So if you needed to reach, say, a higher area, then you are able to play the instrument and make platforms for you to jump across temporarily. I'm not going to give the moons of this kingdom a special effect because I feel like the majority of kingdoms in the game should still have normal moons. That way it's still special when you get moons with special effects. So the moons in the music kingdom will only serve the purpose of powering the Odyssey. Next up is a kingdom that Nintendo may be a little less likely to do, but a casino kingdom. Kind of like how the Metro Kingdom was based off of New York, this kingdom will be based off of Las Vegas. And before we get into my ideas for this kingdom, I do want to say I vaguely remember other YouTubers coming up with a similar idea for a Mario Odyssey kingdom, but I don't remember who I heard this idea from, so I'm just going to try and put as much of my own spin on it as possible, but I thought it was too interesting not to include in the video. Now, I was originally thinking that this would be based off of the casino that Luigi runs in the minigame from Super Mario 64 DS, as well as the original New Super Mario Bros. But then I thought it would fit a lot better if the casino was actually run by Waluigi, and the whole aesthetic was kind of based off of Waluigi Pinball. There could even be a little reference to the original track if there was a pinball machine that was based off of Waluigi Pinball, and you had to get enough points in the actual pinball game in order to get a moon. Maybe the boss of the kingdom is just Waluigi as well, and you have to beat him in order to stop him from scamming all the money out of all the people that come to the casino. I feel like there's just so much potential for this idea. I mean, there are so many routes that Nintendo could go with this. Just like I said at the beginning, they could just not have Waluigi Pinball involved at all and go the route of the casino that Luigi ran in those old DS minigames. But no matter how it would be executed, I would just love to see a casino-style kingdom in a Mario Odyssey sequel. As a reward for beating this kingdom, I think it would be a cool idea if you got some of the abilities that Waluigi uses against you in the boss fight. For example, if he decides to throw coins at you during the boss fight that do damage, then after the boss fight's over and you've beaten that kingdom, then you get the ability to throw the coins that you've collected at enemies and it will do damage to them. But then for our third brand new kingdom idea, what if there was an art kingdom somewhat based off of that one New Super Mario Bros. U level that I honestly can't remember the name of, but it will be on the screen. Thank you, future me, for putting the name there. Now let's actually talk about what would be in this kingdom. And I think the main theme of this kingdom could revolve around, it was an area taken over by Bowser Jr. with his magic paintbrush from Super Mario Sunshine. Though I would imagine it would be his paintbrush from Bowser's Fury as opposed to the one that was made by Professor Egad from Mario Sunshine, as I don't think it would actually spread just random goop around like that one did, and rather it would just spread actual paint, hence why the entire landscape would look like this Mario U level. Maybe some puzzles throughout this kingdom could involve you spreading paint around different things to make images, and then those images would come to life and help you progress through the rest of the kingdom. And of course, the final boss of this kingdom would very likely be Bowser Jr. And once you defeat him, you could get the reward of his paintbrush, which you could use to paint different things on terrain across the entire world of the game that could spawn in different things or just help you traverse the rest of the world. This could also potentially tie into the previous Mario Sunshine kingdom that I mentioned, as the power power that the Shine Sprites gives the Odyssey might allow you to get to certain parts of this kingdom early by clearing out the paint that Bowser Jr. has spread. Of course, this could also take a completely different approach to having an art kingdom, like maybe something modeled off of Paper Mario the Origami King or something along those lines. There's really absolutely limitless possibilities for what Nintendo could do with a kingdom of this style of concept, so I would absolutely love to see it become a reality. But then moving on to the final kingdom of this video, it's in my opinion one of the most interesting, and that is a tech kingdom, taking inspiration from the Cyber's world from Deltarune Chapter 2. Though I don't have any footage of that game right now, so I'm just going to give you some footage of Electrodrome from Mario Kart 8. I feel like Mario running through a futuristic tech-based city with all sorts of neon buildings all over the place would just be something completely unlike anything that Mario has been in before. And though I don't think it would have as strong an effect as seeing Mario in a real city with real humans in the Metro Kingdom with the original Mario Odyssey did, I feel like it might come pretty darn close. Imagine if the 2D sections in this portion of the game would have Mario sucked into a computer and transform him into 2D, where you would have to go from one end of the computer to the other to get to certain portions of the game. I feel like that would be such a cool concept. It could even transform you into different variants of 2D Mario, from the original Mario Bros all the way up to possibly Mario World, or even maybe the Mario U style. The boss of this kingdom could even potentially be a more high-tech version of the Mecha Bowser from Super Mario Sunshine. Your reward for beating the kingdom could even potentially be a jetpack that this high-tech Mecha Bowser uses, and you can attach that to the Odyssey in order to give it quick bursts of speed every time the jetpack recharges. And I feel like that's just scratching the surface of what Nintendo could do with the potential of having a tech-based kingdom. I mean, I honestly just thought about this for maybe an hour or so, and Nintendo has a whole team of minds working on the ideas for this game, assuming that it is in fact a reality. So whether it's a Mario Odyssey 2 or a completely brand new concept, whatever the next Mario game is almost definitely going to have ideas that Nintendo has put into it that will blow all of us away. But what do you all think? Do you think an open world Mario Odyssey is a horrible idea because you'd have to part with that little cutscene that plays while you're going between kingdoms in the Odyssey? Make sure to let me know down in the comments below. And if you like this video, then why don't you press the like button? I mean, if you got this far in the video, you probably did like it. And if you want to see more content like this on Mario and Nintendo in general, make sure to subscribe so you get notified whenever I upload more videos. With all that out of the way, thank you all for watching. I'm Jacob with the Game Block, signing off.